Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone to our ongoing study of Bhakti Sastri. This evening we're on chapter number 10, entitled Vibhuti Yoga, Opulences of the Absolute. So we begin with the review of chapter 9. Chapter 9 began with hearing about Krishna, the qualifications and disqualifications. Qualifications and disqualifications, like being envious and without envy, and having faith and not having faith. Those were the main qualifications and disqualifications mentioned, as well as, there's a king of knowledge that's confidential, it's purifying, it's joyfully performed, these kind of things. Then we spoke about the Achintya Bheda relationship with the material world. Krishna's Achintya Bheda relationship, inconceivable relationship. How Krishna is in the world, but at the same time he's aloof from the world. He's controlling everything, but at the same time he remains aloof from everything. He has that unique position. And then we described also, went on, verses 11 to 15, described the non-worshippers and worshippers. Verse number 11 described how foolish people mock at him, descending amongst them like a human being. They don't understand his transcendental position and supreme dominion over all that be. Then text number 12 describes the result of that mentality. The result is whatever they do, they will not be successful. The karma yogis won't succeed, they won't achieve their fruit of goals. The jnana yogis won't get liberation. So, whatever they do, they won't be successful. So that's the non-worshippers, the monists. And then texts 13 and 14 describes the Mahatmas. Mahatmas are under the protection of the divine energy, and they're fully engaged in devotional service. They're always chanting the glories of Krishna and endeavoring with great determination. And so, like that, the Mahatmas. And then verse number 15 was a summary, described about the previous verses, and it went on to describe more about other people, others. It mentioned Anye. There are three different groups. There was a first class, second class, and third class, who are all not directly worshipping Krishna. They're worshipping Krishna indirectly, right? So the first class category were those who worship the universal form. And the third class category was the monists, or the impersonalists, described in text 11 and 12. So 16, 17, 18, 19 describes describes those who worship the universal form. And then after that, it goes on to describe about demigod worshippers, 21, 22, 23, 24, like describing about demigod worshippers and how Krishna is actually the supreme object of worship. And then the chapter finishes with the glories of directly worshipping Krishna. Verse number 26, for example, describes how easily Krishna can be worshipped, offering a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water. That Krishna is not so much concerned with our offering, but he does want our devotion. So the glories of using our devotion to directly worship Krishna was text 26. And then also we hear about, there's the verse Yogakshema Vahamyaham, which comes earlier, I think it's 22. Yogakshema Vahamyaham. Krishna says, I carry what you lack and I preserve what you have. For those who meditate on my transcendental form and worship me with love, I carry what you lack and I preserve what you have. So that's Yogakshema Vahamyaham. Text 27 was Karma Yoga, a little bit down from Bhakti Yoga. 26 was pure Bhakti Yoga, but 27 was a little down because it was talking about offering the results of our work. People are attached to working in a particular way, and they can offer the results of that work to Krishna. And then we hear also about the sinful person, that even one is addicted to sinful habits, that Krishna can accept him as a devotee because he's properly situated in devotion. And Lord Krishna says he quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. And Krishna then declares, my devotee will never perish. So because this person's Krishna's devotee, even though he has some bad habits, the bad habits will soon be removed. He will soon be purified of them, and he'll be properly situated in devotional service. So that was, that's coming in the final section there in the 9th chapter. How even the sinful person with bad habits can be delivered. And then Lord Krishna also speaks about people in different positions in society. They may be of low birth. They're papayonis. They're sinful people, but they can all be delivered by power of Krishna consciousness. So, Striyo Vaishyas Tata Sudras Tepi Yanti Paramgatim. The Sudra, the Vaishya, the women, they can all be delivered by Krishna consciousness. They can all attain the supreme destination. And the chapter finishes with the most confidential knowledge that we should engage our mind in thinking of Krishna. We should offer obeisances to Krishna. We should worship Krishna with love. And we should become the devotee. In this way we will go to Krishna without fail. And so 4 processes were stressed by Krishna. These 4 items were considered the most confidential knowledge, because just by these 4 items we can directly go to Krishna and attain Krishna's supreme abode. So using our mind to think of Krishna, that's important. We see that point stressed. It was stressed at the beginning of the 7th chapter, and then it was stressed again at the end of the 9th chapter, and we're going on to hear about it more in the 10th chapter, how we can practice thinking of Krishna. All right, so now the relationship with the previous chapters. Right, relationship with the previous chapter. Would someone like to read?
Now Krishna is instructing Arjuna in more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. Previously, beginning with the 7th chapter, the Lord has already explained his different energies and how they are acting. Now in this chapter, he explains his specific opulences to Arjuna. In the previous chapter, he has clearly explained his different energies to establish devotion in firm conviction. Again, in this chapter, he tells Arjuna about his manifestations and various opulences.
All right. So Krishna instructed Arjuna more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. We had confidential knowledge, more confidential knowledge, and most confidential, right? So this is described as more confidential of his opulences. So 7th chapter explained the different energies. We heard about the para and apara prakriti. And we heard about how we can surrender to Krishna. So this chapter explains Krishna's specific opulences. So we'll hear what these opulences are. So overview of the chapter 10. Chapter 10 entitled the first 7 verses. Chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga, opulences of the Absolute. So the first 7 verses, one who has understood Krishna's unfathomable nature engages in his devotional service. If we've actually understood how great Krishna is, then definitely we should want to be his devotee and we should want to engage in his service. We should think how fortunate I am to have a friendship, to have a relationship with a personality like Krishna. We should think ourselves so fortunate to be devotees. We see in the material world, you know, people are devoted, somebody's a devotee of their political party, someone's devotee of their cricket team, someone's a devotee of their favorite movie star, like this, you know. They're so mundane and they're so limited. But we want to be devoted to Krishna. If we've actually understood Krishna's actual nature, then we should be so happy to be devotees and to engage in his service. So then, this chapter 10, we'll hear the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavad Gita. The 4 verses which comprise the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Just like in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto, 9th chapter, you have the Chatur Shloki Bhagavatam, which are the original 4 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. These 4 verses were imparted into the heart of Brahma by the Lord himself. So here in the Bhagavad Gita, there is also a Chatur Shloki, which are like the essence. These 4 verses make up the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, the message of the Bhagavad Gita contained here within these 4 verses. We'll be looking at these 4 verses closely. 4 verses comprise the knowledge of the scriptures. Vedic knowledge comes in 3 divisions. There is Sambandha Gyan, Abhidaya Gyan, and Prayojana Gyan. Sambandha Gyan meaning knowledge of the relationship. Abhidaya Gyan meaning knowledge of the process of devotion. And Prayojana meaning the goal of life. So the first verse, number 8, describes Sambandha Gyan. Then the 9th verse is describing the Abhidaya, the process. And then verses 10 and 11 give us the Prayojana. So we'll look at these. All right, then after those Chatur Shloki, then verses 12 to 18, we'll hear Arjuna's acceptance. How Arjuna responds after hearing these Chatur Shloki verses. Arjuna totally accepts Krishna and he requests to hear more of Krishna's opulences. Arjuna is inspired. He's understood Krishna is really the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's very happy about it. And he wants to hear more about Krishna's opulences. And that will make up the rest of the chapter. Verses 19 up to 42, we will hear about Lord Krishna's opulences in the material world. Right? How to see Krishna in the material world, or what is called vibhutis. Vibhutis, they're also Krishna, how Krishna comes in this world. In Srimad Bhagavatam it describes Krishna's different incarnations in this world, and vibhutis are also Krishna, how Krishna appears in the world. Alright, here's the first verse, someone can read.
Ji Maharaj. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya eva mahabaho Shinu me paramam vachah Yatte ham priyamanaya Vakshyami hitkamayaya. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna. Because you are my dear friend, for your benefit I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." Hare Krishna.
Alright, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about Bhagavan, right? Mataji, do you know, how do we define Bhagavan?
One who has all the six opulences.
Yes.
Wealth, strength, etc.
What are the six opulences?
All knowledgeable, all strength, most beautiful, renunciation, all powerful,
all beauty.
All beauty.
Yeah, we had beauty.
Beautiful, knowledgeable.
Wealth.
Wealth, most wealthy.
Wealth, beauty, knowledge, renunciation, strength, and fame. Right?
Ji Maharaj.
These are the six opulences. So what does it mean? What's the significance of addressing Krishna as Bhagavan? When Srila Vyasadeva always puts Sri Bhagavan Uvacha whenever Krishna speaks. How should we understand this?
Maybe Maharaj, because he possesses all these six and nobody else has all of them in all together.
Yes, right. Nobody equal to him, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
He is the Supreme. There's nobody above him, no one equal to him. And then Krishna is telling Arjuna that you are my dear friend, and for your benefit I shall speak to you, giving knowledge better than what I have already explained. So, better knowledge, we thought we just heard Raja Vidya. Isn't that the king of knowledge? Is this better than Raja Vidya?
No, Maharaj.
So, how do we explain this? He said, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained. Well, knowledge of this particular category of knowledge will be better.
Yes, Maharaj. Because Krishna has already given the most guitam. Confidential knowledge is already given, as you said, that now he's giving more confidential. So in that category, yes, Maharaj. Thank you. Maharaj, maybe because he's trying to explain more intricate details about himself now.
I'm sorry, what's that, Mataji?
Maybe because Krishna is explaining more intricate details about himself now.
Okay, yes, Krishna.
Maybe that's why it's much more confidential than it was maybe before, whatever he said.
Well,
Ma-
it doesn't say it's
Maharaj,
more confidential, but it says better. Yes?
Maharaj, is it like that Krishna is gonna tell about his devotees? Like in Chatushloki, he tells that like 4 verses, and in chapter 12 also, like how, so he's gonna tell about his devotees, qualities like this.
Yeah. Yeah, he's concerned about his devotees. Yeah, well, that, of course, that was at the end of the 9th chapter. We heard Krishna is concerned about his devotees. And definitely because Arjuna, because he's a very dear friend of Krishna, so Krishna wants to give further knowledge to Arjuna. He wants to explain everything about him. He wants to reveal everything about himself to Arjuna. And because Arjuna is his dear friend. So he knows that he's giving this knowledge to Arjuna. He can trust him with it. He's not going to abuse it or doubt it. That he has faith in Krishna. So this Yaktiham Priyamanaya, he's very dear to Krishna. So that he has that very intimate relationship with the Lord. So the Lord is very willing to reveal more about himself to Arjuna. Oh, a bit more. Okay, so here's Prabhupada purport. Someone can read.
Now Krishna is instructing Arjuna in more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. Previously, beginning with the 7th chapter, the Lord has already explained his different energies and how they are acting. Now in this chapter he explains his specific opulences to Arjuna. In the previous chapter, he has clearly explained his different energies to establish devotion in firm conviction. Again, in this chapter, he tells Arjuna about his manifestations and various opulences. Bhagavad Gita, Purport 10.1.
Okay, so Prabhupada does mention, he said, more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. So in previous chapters it was mentioned earlier, like that also, something of his opulences, his different energies. Here you can see from the previous chapter, in the 7th chapter we heard Rasohamaksu Kunteya, right? And then in the 8th chapter, Adi Yagnoham Evatra. And then in the 9th chapter, Aham Kratu Raham Yagna. And so Lord Krishna was talking about himself, right? He was describing himself, how he's present there in everything, through his energies. Of course, this is Krishna's impersonal feature. Indirectly, Krishna is there. Indirectly, he's all these things. He's the yagna, and he's the kratu, and he's the taste and water, and everything else. So now in the 10th chapter, we're going to hear more about Krishna's opulences. Understand more about the greatness of Krishna. So, Bhuya eva mahabaho shrinu me paramam vacha. Listen again, supreme instruction, O mighty armed Arjuna. So we want to hear. Previously, beginning with the 7th chapter, the Lord has already explained his different energies and how they are acting. Now, in this chapter, he explains his specific opulences to Arjuna. In the previous chapter, he's clearly explained his different energies to establish devotion in firm conviction. Again, in this chapter, he tells Arjuna about his manifestations and various opulences. All right, so Prabhupada is explaining it very clearly for us. All right, someone read.
मे विदुत्सुरगणा प्रभवं नाम हर्षया अहम् आदिर्हि देवानां महर्षीणां च सर्वशः. Neither the host of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages.
So we may wonder, we're not able to understand Krishna, but even the demigods and the great sages, they're also not able to know Krishna. Because Krishna is the source of the demigods and sages. Because they also come from Krishna, so they also don't know much about Krishna. Okay. Jumping up a little bit, going up to text number 7. Yeah? Read.
Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yo veti tattvattah so vikalpena yogena yujyate natra samshayah. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt.
So we can see how important it is that we are convinced. We have to be convinced of Krishna's position, and understanding something of his opulence and power that will convince us to fully surrender our mind and senses in the service of Krishna. Using the material body in the service of Krishna. We recognize this body belongs to Krishna. Everything is Krishna's. That's Krishna's opulence. So we want to use everything properly. Pure, unalloyed devotional service. Devotional service, if it's mixed, will not have the same effect. So it must be unalloyed, without impurities. Unalloyed. You get metals, alloys, alloys of steel. You put these different metals into the steel to give it different qualities. But Prabhupada talks about unalloyed devotional service. No impure, nothing added. Just only bhakti, only devotion. No material desires for enjoying the world, and not even a thought for liberation for our own self. We just simply want to serve Krishna. So that is real devotion. That is pure devotion. Yes, someone read.
Knowing the greatness of Krishna. Unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulences of Supreme Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. Generally, people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. Here are the details. If one knows factually how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of Supreme, there is no alternative but to surrender to him. This factual knowledge can be known from the descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and similar literature. BG 10.7.
Yes, when we actually know the greatness of Krishna, then we will really want to serve. We want to surrender, to engage properly. So this is why it's important for us to hear about Krishna. Without hearing about Krishna, how will we ever be convinced? Yes? Oh, we read this, right? Okay, so we'll go ahead to this Chaturshloki of the Bhagavad Gita. So from these 4 verses we will hear how the Lord generates and nourishes the devotion of his unalloyed devotees. The devotion of his unalloyed devotees. His devotees are pure already, and Lord Krishna nourishes them further. He allows them to develop more devotion. So we'll hear how he does that in these Chaturshloki verses. First of all, text number 8. Yes, read.
Aham sarvasya prabho matah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam bhava samanvita. I'm the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts.
Okay, Buddha Bhava Samanvitaha. They worship Krishna with all their heart. So the Buddha Bhava, this is Bhava, right? They have that Bhava for Krishna. Why? How did they get that Bhava? Because they're wise. They've understood that Krishna is the source of the material and the spiritual worlds. That everything has come from him. So, this is how they're able to properly worship Krishna. They have that Buddha, and they've developed that Bhava, so they can worship Krishna with real love and devotion. So this is the Sambandha Gyan. Krishna said everything comes from him. Not only the material world, but the spiritual world also has its source in Krishna. Now, of course, the spiritual world is eternal, but at the same time, it's all Krishna's. It's Krishna's abode. It's not different from Krishna. So everything comes from him. We want to convince people of this, and we have to be convinced ourselves also. And then we can develop that mood, that bhava for Krishna. To worship Krishna with all of our heart. Okay, so pointing out these 2 significant terms, Buddha, the learned or the wise, and Bhava Samanvita, with great attention. Yes, can someone read from Prabhupada's lecture on this verse?
I am the origin of everything. Everything means the universe also. Whenever you can imagine, whatever you can imagine, that comes within the category of everything. So if Krishna is the source of everything, then if you love Krishna, you love the universe. Actually, that is so. If you love your father, then you love your brother. If you love your country, then you love your countrymen. So the love begins from the origin. If you love your body, then you love your finger. Iti matva bhajante mam. One who has understood this fact, that God is the origin of all emanations, one who has understood this fact very nicely, scientifically, then by loving God, you love everything. And bhava sanmanvitaha, buddha, buddha. One must be very well versed at the same time, completely absorbed in spiritual emotion, bhav. This bhav is the very highest platform for coming to the perfection of life. Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhupada points out qualifications for coming to that level. Buddha, one must be very well versed. It means we must know what Krishna is teaching. We must know the teachings of Lord Krishna. We should know the philosophy. And at the same time, we have to have that mood of devotion. Then that bhava will develop. As Prabhupada said, that is coming to the perfection of life. That's the higher stage. All right, so then we go on to text number 9, which is describing the process of devotion. Abhidaya. Yes, someone can read?
The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me.
So the activities of the pure devotees are described, how they pass their time. They're fully devoted to my service, and they get their pleasure, they get their happiness in life by discussing Krishna consciousness, enlightening one another and conversing about me. Katayantas chamam nityam. They're always discussing the topics of Krishna, and this way they're enlightening one another. Tushanti cha, ramanti cha. By the katha. So this important points, right? Speaking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna. That is the real meaning of sadhu sangha, coming into association with devotees. That we want to be fully in Krishna consciousness by always speaking about Krishna, sharing our thoughts. So, Madhyata Prana, their lives are devoted to my service. Madhyata, the thoughts of the devotees. Their thoughts, their life, it's all devoted to the service of Krishna. So this is Abhidaya. This is the process of devotional service. We want to know how to do devotional service. This is what you have to do. It's a process. You have to enlighten one another. Always conversing, discussing topics of Krishna. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literature, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. From the verse number 9 of the 10th chapter, purport. Lord Chaitanya himself would go every day to Gadadhar Pandit, and he would hear about Prahlad Maharaj or the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. In this way, Lord Chaitanya was taking pleasure every day in hearing. And we know Srila Prabhupada used to also read Krishna book. He would have some people read Krishna book to him. And Prabhupada would love to hear the pastimes of Lord Krishna. He would take so much pleasure. So our business as devotees is also reading, hearing about Krishna. We often discuss how we can encourage the devotees to read more. But I think more and more devotees are reading. I'm sure more and more devotees are appreciating the value of Krishna's books, Prabhupada's books. More and more devotees, they're having reading clubs online, and they're arranging to have groups to come together, to read together. It's very wonderful. And it's going on Regularly, every day, people take pleasure in hearing, just discussing these transcendental literatures. Okay, so here's a quote here from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Someone like to read for us?
Such Ananya Bhaktas who have attained spiritual intelligence, Buddhi Yoga by my mercy, attain factual knowledge of me, mentioned previously, in which is hard to understand.
Go on.
Their minds are greedy for my form, name, qualities, pastimes, and the taste of sweetness, mad chittaha. They are unable to maintain their lives without me, mad gata pranaha. Just as men are completely dedicated to food, anna gata prana nara, since they depend on it to live. They explain to each other with friendliness about the types of bhakti and the real nature of bhakti, bodhayantaha. They talk to me, a great ocean of very sweet form, qualities and pastimes, kathayantaha, and glorify me by narrating about my form, qualities and pastimes. Since smarana, macchittaha, shravana, bodhayantaha and kirtana, kathayantaha are the best among all types of bhakti, they have been specifically mentioned here. Thus, by this bhakti alone, these devotees are satisfied and experience happiness. This is a description of their internal experience.
Okay, so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells us the important types of bhakti. They mentioned here the best among all types of bhakti: hearing, chanting, remembering. Prabhupada always emphasized these things to us also. He said this is the roots of our devotion, the hearing and the chanting and the remembering. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also is emphasizing here, is bhakti alone, devotees are satisfied and experience happiness. And very nicely he compares it to how people are dedicated to eating. They depend on food for their life. In the same way the devotees, their life is just talking about Krishna, glorifying Krishna, narrating about his form, qualities, pastimes. We want that kind of association. We want to be reminded about Krishna more and more. I remember as a young devotee, we had this one devotee in the temple, and he would always come out after the deity greeting, and he would ask, do you remember what color was the deity's garland? Do you remember what kind of ring the deity had on his finger today? Do you remember what was the ornaments on the crown of the deity? And this way, he was practicing, remembering, meditating the beauty of the dress of the deities and remembering all of this. Very pleasing. So this is how we can get satisfaction, how we can get peace of mind, by engaging our mind in the service of Krishna. Yeah? Go ahead. Mataji, go ahead, you were reading.
Or the meaning of satisfaction and enjoyment can be as follows. They are satisfied even at the stage of sadhana by continual performance of their worship brought about by good fortune, and they take pleasure in thinking of their future attainment of prema and enjoy with their Lord through the mind. This interpretation indicates Raganuga Bhakti.
Okay. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is encouraging us. He said they're satisfied even at the stage of sadhana. Of course, we're all at the stage of sadhana, but the idea is that they will take pleasure in thinking of the future. In the future, one day we may get to prema. and we will enjoy with the Lord. So that will be, that's something we could all contemplate about. That now we're doing sadhana, but if we go on in the future, we hope one day in the future we will also come to prema, and we can enjoy these loving dealings with the Lord. So that is Raganuga Bhakti. Okay. And going ahead. 10:10. Someone read.
Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yen mamupanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Hare Krishna.
Ah, yes. So constant devotion. Satata yuktanam bhajatam. Priti purvakam, with devotion, constantly devotee to me with love. Priti purvakam. Then Krishna said, Dadami buddhi yogam. I give the buddhi. I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So Krishna gives that. To who does he give it to? To those who are constantly devoted with love. So Bhagavad Gita 10 focuses on buddhi yoga. Prabhupada explains. Please read.
When a person knows the goal of life but is addicted to the fruits of activities, he is acting in karma yoga. When he knows that the goal is Krishna, but he takes pleasure in mental speculations to understand Krishna, he is acting in Jnana yoga. And when he knows the goal and seeks Krishna completely in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, he is acting in Bhakti yoga or Buddhi yoga, which is the complete yoga. This complete yoga is the highest perfectional stage of life. Bhagavad Gita 10:10.
Okay, so when he knows that the goal of life is Krishna, but he takes pleasure in mental speculation, that's mixed. It's not Bhakti yoga, that's Jnana yoga. It's enjoying the mind, speculation. And if he's addicted to enjoying the fruits of activities, karma yoga. So the yoga ladder, karma yoga, jnana yoga, not devotion. But if he knows that the goal is Krishna, is completely in Krishna consciousness, then that is bhakti or buddhi yoga. Right? So that's what we want. Vishwanath
Maharaj?
Yes?
Maharaj, I had one doubt.
You have a doubt?
Yes, Maharaj, right now, we are trying to practice devotional service, but we have some responsibilities and we want to progress in our material life as well, like in our job and those aspects also. Like we may have a desire to get a big house or get a big car, but we know the purpose of life also. So is that karma yoga or bhakti yoga? Because we know we are trying to practice, we are following the principles also, but still there are some material goals also in our life.
Then it means your bhakti is mixed with karma. It's not pure bhakti, because your devotion is mixed with your material desires.
So Maharaj, is it not healthy for our devotional life to have material aspirations? Like if you want to progress in your professional life, so is it not healthy for our spiritual life?
Well, it's certainly a deviation from your spiritual life. Your professional life, your career in the material world doesn't really relate to your devotional life.
But Krishna is telling Ma Manusmar Yuddhacha. So he's telling that you do your duties and remember me. So we are.
Well, then that's karma yoga. You do your
Okay.
duty. You're doing your duty and remember, right? That's karma yoga. That's not bhakti yoga. If you're thinking like that, Krishna told me to do my duty. Doing your duty. But Krishna also says surrender. He said, give up all dharmas. Sarva dharmam parigeshna. He said, give up all your dharmas. Just surrender to me. I will protect you. Do not fear. That's a higher level than you say, do your duty. Remember me. Yes, Krishna says, remember me and perform your duty. First he said, remember me and then perform your duty. But what is your ultimate duty? Your spiritual duty. Jivarsvarupahai Nitya Krishna Das. Your eternal position is a servant of Krishna. But if your meditation, if your concentration is the bigger house, a bigger car, then that's definitely going to affect your bhakti. Because you're thinking, I need a bigger house, I need a bigger car, I need this, I need that. There's no end. What we need is bhakti. We need devotion to Krishna. The bigger house, the bigger car is not going to save you at the time of death.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So we do have that problem in material life, you know, externally you can put on a show like that, but in your heart you should think that actually I'm not, I don't really, I couldn't care. Externally, because you have to live in the material world, and probably you don't want your wife to know, you don't want the family to know, you wouldn't want the people in your company to know that you're not thinking like that. Because everybody in the company, they're all thinking like that. Everyone else is materialistic. Everyone else is thinking, make money and get a bigger house and a bigger car. And if you're not like them, then they'll think there's something wrong with you. And so sometimes, you do have to put on a guise and just cover up your real nature. That actually what you really want is Krishna consciousness. But sometimes you just can't reveal it to people because they think there's something wrong with them.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So we have to be a bit cautious about what we do, how we behave, the material world.
Maharaj, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So Maharaj, you're saying that we have to put up a guise and we cannot reveal our true intentions or nature. But what if, while putting on that guise, you actually get attracted to it and you just lose your path? Then what do?
Lose your path?
As in, if you get attracted to that material guise and you forget what actually you were doing, or you get astray.
Yeah, you have to be careful, of course. We always have to be careful. We don't want to lose the path, yeah. It's true. But I'm saying, that you're in the material world and you have responsibilities, you have a family and so on like that. You have to keep your job. I'm saying sometimes just to get along with people, just to fit in the place, in your company and like that, to fit in the office with the other people, you just have to be a bit like them, and sometimes you just have to pretend. But in your heart, you should always remember what is your real business in life, what you really want. So we have to, as you say, it's risky to pretend because you may go off track. But, what can you do? You're in the, if you don't pretend, if you actually reveal yourself, you may be out of a job. Because you may think, oh, this guy is useless, he just only wants to chant Hare Krishna. What they want is when you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about your job. And they want you to think like that from morning till night. Of course, devotees, we're devotees, we train our mind to think of Krishna. We don't think in all these things. We have our sadhana every morning. But if everybody in the company, everybody in your office, if they know that you're chanting Hare Krishna 2 hours every morning or something, they'll think, well, what? This guy's useless, he's not thinking about the company, he's not thinking about our business. So sometimes, we do have to cover up our real nature.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Unless you're fortunate, unless you're in a situation where it doesn't matter, where nobody else cares, or maybe everybody's a devotee and
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, just want to ask you one thing. What is the difference between Karam Yoga and Karam Vishnu Bhakti? You can explain me some examples.
What does he want to know? What's the difference between what?
Karma Yoga and Karma Vishnu Bhakti.
Karma Yoga and Karma Mishra Bhakti. So Karma Yoga,
Yes, Maharaj.
Karma Yoga is working in a detail. You perform your duty and you give some of the results. You dedicate the results of your work to Krishna. Right? That's Karma Yoga. You just simply do your work, do your duty, and at the end of the work you give some of the results of your work. You sacrifice. You may sacrifice all the results, or you may sacrifice a portion of the results. So there's different levels of Karma Yoga. There's Sakama Karma Yoga and Niskam Karma Yoga. Right? So Sakam Karma Yoga, you're working and you sacrifice a tiny portion of the result. And Niskam Karma Yoga, you're working and you sacrifice most of the results of the work. So that's Karma Yoga. But Karma Mishra Bhakti is you're doing some devotion, but you're also attached to the results. You do some devotional activities, like you do some hearing and chanting, but at the same time you're also attached to the result. You're also attached to working and getting some results. And you may sacrifice some of the results. You may. So that's Karma Mishra Bhakti. It's bhakti mixed with desires for material results. All right, Prabhu?
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Okay, we'll go ahead here. All right, here's a quote from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur about this Tesham Satata Yuktanam. Would someone read, please?
It is understood that the joy of a devotee described in the previous verse is spiritual bliss beyond the modes. But by which method do the devotees gain direct contact with you? Who gives them the method of realizing you? Anticipating such a question, the Lord speaks this verse. I give Buddhi Yoga, Bhakti, to those who are constantly desirous of association with me, Satata Yuktanam. This means that the Lord alone causes Buddhi Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. I alone appear within the functions of their minds. This Buddhi Yoga cannot be obtained at all from any other source, and it doesn't appear on its own. The statements means that realization of me is given only by me and received only by the devotee.
So This Buddhi Yoga cannot be attained at all from any other source. It doesn't appear on its own. It's given by Krishna and received only by the devotee. So Buddhi Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, synonymous with Bhakti Yoga. Okay, here's an exercise for you. How many people are here today?
18.
All right, are we able to make some, well, how will we do it? Pairs?
You can do 6 pairs or 3 devotees each.
Okay, 3 devotees, yeah? 3 devotees can be. Okay, there's one common philosophy also held by a lot of religious groups, that God can be understood directly from within, and that no guru or spiritual master is necessary. So how will you reply to this statement? With reference to purport of 10.10. Remember 10.10, to those who are constantly devoted, I give the understand. In other words, Krishna is speaking. So the person is saying Krishna speaks from within. So you don't need a guru. So, how are you going to reply? All right, so make groups. How many? 6 groups? 18 people?
Sure, Mataji. That will be how to go mark it.
What is the essential I don't know what
All right, is everyone back?
One group is missing, I guess, Maharaj.
One group is missing? Yes?
Ji Maharaj.
Everyone's back, yeah? All right, let's hear from Araja Gadadhar Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you so much. So of course, I mean, if we speak, if we see this specifically this verse 10.10, from this, anyone, especially all other organizations, spiritual organizations, who make out that we don't need a spiritual master. So this verse, in itself supports this argument of them very much, that that one doesn't need a spiritual master, and without any need of any spiritual master, one can get Krishna. So one does not depend upon any other devotee, or need to take initiation, or need to take shelter of a spiritual master. But similarly, if we see that, if we see the first para, we see that Buddhi Yoga, Prabhupada is explaining the Buddhi Yoga, and that one should, here Prabhupada is explaining that the ultimate of goal, that to achieve that we need association of devotees, and we also need a bona fide spiritual master. So, here Prabhupada is saying that that goal is Krishna and goal is assigned, but it is progressively traversed. But Prabhupada is emphasizing that there is importance of a spiritual master and association of devotees. One alone, it's not that easy to approach Krishna directly.
Okay.
And one thing more can be quoted is that if someone, uses this verse as an argument to support that we don't need a spiritual master, then we can also counter that why are you only taking this verse? Krishna has spoken 700 other verses in this Bhagavad Gita. There Krishna has many times, especially if we see in the 4th chapter, he has emphasized that we need to take shelter of a spiritual master. So, if we take all of the 700 verses together, then we do understand that Krishna is himself emphasizing the need of a spiritual master.
Of course, if we look at this verse is also specifying who does Krishna speak to? What kind of person does he speak to? He doesn't just speak to everyone and anyone, right? There are qualifications to get direct communication from Krishna. It's not just an open forum that Krishna's speaking to everyone. No, Krishna has his special people. Who does he speak to? And that's very clear in that verse. That verse is very, very specific. Who Krishna instructs, who does he speak to? So somebody's saying, oh, yeah, we get from God. Yeah, but are you qualified to hear God? You really think God's going to speak to you? What is your qualification? That has to be considered. Yeah?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, let's hear from some other people. Yes?
Maharaj, like one more thing, Krishna himself accepted spiritual master. That Krishna accepted Sandipani Muni, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted Ishwar Puri. So we can see that Lord is himself teaching by his example that the need of a spiritual master that we cannot understand all. And also I heard an analogy that if you want to see a mountain from binocular, if it doesn't have lens, then the mountain will appear very far off. But if we put a lens in between, then the mountain will be very close to our eyes. Similarly, it is very difficult to see Krishna directly. But if we try to understand Krishna by the mercy of devotee, then Krishna becomes we can easily understand Krishna. And Krishna himself says that a person who says that I am your devotee is actually not my devotee. But a person who is the devotee of my devotee is actually a devotee. So Krishna is also establishing this thing that that we cannot understand him directly. We need to be under. We should come under parampara.
Okay, yes, these are some good points. They didn't quite relate to the verse in question, but still they were good arguments. Thank you, nice. Yes, Krishna had a guru, and the spiritual masters are our link to Krishna. We want to go to Krishna. Krishna wants to know who's recommending you, who's bringing you here. Right? All right, any other points? Anyone? Yeah, we didn't hear from the ladies. Marriages, any points? Anything to add?
Maharaj, one point from Guru Kripa Prasade by Bhakti Lata Bij. So, by the mercy of Krishna, one gets the spiritual master. So, if this is, we can say like, it's not exactly from the 10.10 PG, but still it's nice. And I was talking to Tarun Prabhu, he gave one more point, like, Yasya Prasadat Bhagavad Prasado, daily we recite this. So, this is like a very too strong point to say. And here also, Krishna is saying that, Prabhupada is saying in the purport, a person may have a bona fide spiritual master, may be attached to a spiritual organization. So it's saying that we cannot approach Krishna directly, we really need a guru who is a representative of Krishna, so he can connect us to Krishna. And still Krishna is promising that if you are not, still you are just engaging yourself in discharging the pure devotional service. If you are not intelligent, I dadami buddhi yogam tam, I'll give you the intelligence. Krishna himself is saying. So like this, these 2 points can be added.
Okay, thank you. But you know, you said Krishna is giving, but again the point is, who is he giving to? You know, you said Krishna is giving the intelligence, but who does he give that intelligence to? He gives it to those people who are qualified to get that intelligence. They have to be properly, fully devoted to Krishna. There's no question of, you know, being just a half devotee. You have to be fully absorbed in worshipping Krishna, right? Because these 2 verses, 10.10 and 10.11, they're describing this prayojana gyan, the goal of life, love of God. So to those who are constantly devoted and worship with love, then Krishna reciprocates. Then he'll help us to come to him.
Maharaj, I have a question here.
Yes.
So Maharaj, as Mataji said, Prabhupada writes, a person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization, but if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instruction so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. So Maharaj, here Prabhupada is writing that, you know, a less intelligent person might also get instructions from Krishna from within.
Yes.
And what is the meaning here, Maharaj, that may have a bona fide or may be attached? So maybe without a spiritual master also this happens? I am thoroughly confused by this statement.
No, I don't think Prabhupada means that. I think you do need the spiritual master. It's just he's written it that way. He may have a spiritual master, may be the member of a spiritual organization, but may not have the intelligence how to come fully to Krishna. So it's not just mechanical. I think the point is there that it's not just simply a mechanical relationship, but there's a genuine desire of the person, you know, but somehow he just doesn't know exactly what it's supposed to do. So Krishna arranges. Krishna arranges to help him, to enlighten him, to guide him, to bring him to that perfectional point. This Prabhupada describing like that. And many people have, we're members of ISKCON and we have a spiritual master and so on, but we don't always get a lot of opportunity to get an individual association. But Krishna is there, and Krishna directs us also. We have to get some guidance from Krishna, from the heart. But that has to be confirmed. Whatever guidance we're getting from the heart, that would have to be confirmed by sadhu, shastra and guru. We had an interesting situation in one country which I preach in. There was a lady, and she said Krishna told her that the Bhagavad Gita is too old and that she was to write the new version of the scriptures. And she wrote another book, she wrote a new book. And she said Krishna told her that she should write this book because he told her Bhagavad Gita is already out of date and he wants a new book, and she was to write it. And the book was just garbage, it was just nonsense. But this lady, somehow she wrote this book and published it, and she got so many followers and took money from so many people. And so many people believed her. And she was getting people to chant Hare Krishna and to hear about Krishna a little bit. But the main thing was her new book. The old books, they're out of date. And she said, Krishna told her to do this. So we get this, we get that kind of cheating which goes on. People say, Krishna spoke to me. Krishna told me I can eat meat, I don't have to be a vegetarian. Krishna told me I can live with my girlfriend, we don't have to get married. Krishna, there's so much cheating goes on in this way. It's very common. People say, Krishna told me from the heart. So who does Krishna talk to? Who does he talk to? It's very clear. Those who are constantly devoted and worship Krishna, not to just anybody. So we have to expose these rascals who are, they speak philosophy, but it's just garbage. It's not real philosophy, it's just to support their own sense gratification. And we're trying to fight against these things by giving people the real truth, the message, the real message of the scriptures. Are there any other points anyone wants to add? Okay, we'll go ahead. Let's see, where are we? Yes? Someone read?
God talks
God
with whom?
talks. Yeah.
Please, Prabhuji, go ahead. Please, Prabhuji.
Okay. God talks with whom? That is said. Tesham sadate yuktanam bhajtam pritipurvakam. Those who have already become devotee of God and engaged in His service, He talks with him, not a third-class fool. He doesn't talk with him. It is clearly stated. One who is 24 hours engaged in the service of the Lord with love and faith, God talks with him. How do you understand that God is talking with him? A rascal fool who has no business with God. Conversation New Vrindavan.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Prabhu, keep reading.
So first of all, see whether he is 24 hours engaged in God's service with love and faith. Then you can understand, yes, God is talking with him. But he has no preliminary qualification. If he says, I can talk with God, he is a nonsense.
Okay. Yeah, we have to understand this very important point here. All right, someone keep reading. A new person can read. Eagerness is qualification.
God wants to see how eager you are. So in the development of our eagerness and sincerity to have knowledge and spiritual understanding, God will help us. Lolyam, eagerness, that is the prize. This is the only qualification. You must be very, very eager to see the lotus feet of Krishna in this very life. You must be very eager to talk with Krishna in this very life, but not to become sahajya by service. Krishna talks with the devotee, but not with the non-devotee. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Only persons who are always engaged in Krishna's service, he has no other business. Satata means 24 hours. Bhajatam means in service.
Heavy, yeah? Prabhupada's preaching strongly.
You must always find opportunity to render service to Krishna. That is the qualification. It doesn't matter what you are. You may be this or that. It doesn't matter. But this eagerness for service can be acquired by anyone simply by sincerity. That is the prize. Rupa Goswami says, Tatra lolyam ekam mulyam. So I have too much eagerness. But no. Immediately Sri Rupa Goswami warns, Na janma koti labhyah sukriti bhir labhyate. This eagerness to achieve Krishna's mercy, to approach the lotus feet of Krishna in this life. I shall do anything. I shall sacrifice anything. This kind of determination is not very easily obtained. Na jannam koti bhi, sukriti bhi. Sukriti means pious activities. Without being pious, nobody can approach Krishna. Krishna is not so cheap. It's from lecture, Chaitanya Chaitamrita, New Vrindavan, 1974.
All right, Prabhupada's quoting that verse, which is from where the Krishna consciousness movement, the name of the Krishna consciousness movement comes. Right? Krishna Bhakti Labhati, like that there's only one qualification. There's only one qualification, and you have to have that eagerness, and you have to pay that price. Only one price to become Krishna conscious, right? So, Muyam Ekalam, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamadi, Kriyadam Yatopi Labhyate, Tatra Loyam Muyam Ekalam, Janma Koti Sukriter Nalabhyate. Janma Koti Sukriter Nalabhyate. In other words, you have to have done a lot of pious activities over many lifetimes to get that kind of loyam, that greediness to get Krishna consciousness. It's the only qualification to become Krishna consciousness. You have to have that intense desire to achieve it, which they use the term loyam, that greediness to get it, that I want this so badly. That is the price for becoming Krishna conscious. And when you have that kind of qualification, then we can approach Krishna. So Prabhupada is pointing out, it's very rare that people have that kind of greed. Well, we have loyam, but our greediness is for money, our greediness is for so many other things, you know. But this loyam, this is the loyam to get Krishna consciousness, to get love of Krishna, to have a relationship with Krishna. That kind of greed. And that's the only price which is acceptable. Right? Usually we bargain, right? Give me a cheaper price. Kam se kam kitna rupya chahiye? You know, we ask, what's the cheapest price you'll give me? And then they say, no, no other, only one price, fixed price. Loyam, tatra loyam, muyam ekalam. You have to have that greed. Then, how to get that greed? By pious activities over many lifetimes. So, not easy, very cheap, very difficult. Okay. Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Priti Purvakam, with love, not only that officially you love, then he'll talk with you. Buddhi Yogam Dadami Tam, he'll give you intelligence, he'll talk with you, because he is within your heart. Simply you have to qualify yourself to talk with Krishna. Then Krishna is not far away. He is within your heart. Otherwise, he is very, very far away. If you want to understand by your intelligence, with intelligence, have you got? You have to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead by your service, and then he'll reveal himself. Here I am. What do you want? That is the process. So Prabhupada's point, we have to please Krishna by our service. Very important. What intelligence have you got?
Maharaj, can I ask something?
Yeah.
Maharaj, 2 slides before also and here also they are again and again telling about the qualification. So Maharaj, is this the qualification is like just rendering pure devotional service?
Well, the qualification is not just doing pure devotional service, but you have to do the pure devotional service with this eagerness.
Eagerness, yes, that was the point.
Eagerness is the qualification. That our loyam is the word in Sanskrit. That greediness to get Krishna, to be with Krishna, to qualify yourself to talk to Krishna. We have to have that very strong, intense desire to achieve something. You have to want it very badly. If you don't, if you're thinking, well, I want this, but I also want that, and I also want other, I have so many other things I want. That's not very intense. Not very focused, right? We have so many other things. So Prabhupada said, we can say, who receives this intelligence? And you were quoting from the purport, here it is from the same purport. A person may have a bona fide spiritual master. He may be attached to a spiritual organization. But if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness with love and devotion and render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to make progress and ultimately attain to him. Chapter 10, verse number 10, purport. So we've highlighted this fact, the real qualification is that sincerity and he's devoted to the activities of devotional service. That's much more important than the intelligence, you know, the gyan and the whatever other qualities may be there. But if he's really sincere and devoted, then Krishna helps. Krishna really cares and helps that person. How does he work? Well, he gives us intelligence. He tells us what we have to do. He tells us, you know, what way we should be working, what service we should take up, and who should be with, where to associate. That's the kind of direction you get from Krishna. He tells you, you know, that's your guru, that's the person, take instruction from him, associate with this person, and do this service, you know, don't do that service, do this service, you know. And go there, be in that temple, don't be in this temple, go to that temple. Sometimes like that, you know. We get these kind of directions from Krishna. Is it clear?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So then number 11. Someone read.
तेषामेवानुकम्पार्थम् अहम् अज्ञानजं तमः नाश्यामि भावावस्तो ज्ञानदीपेन भास्वता. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance.
Yes. So, the darkness born of ignorance, the ajnana, right? By the jnana depena bhasvata, this ajnana is taken away by the jnana depena, with the lamp of knowledge, destroys the darkness of ignorance. Baladeva Vidya Bhushan says, since they have been existing in the darkness of ignorance for such a long time, how is it possible that you can illuminate their hearts? All right, devotee may question to Krishna like that we've been in the darkness of ignorance a long time. Can you really illuminate their heart? Not for the samistas. The samistas are those who follow the path of Nishkam Karma Yoga. So not for these, then Jnana Yoga, Nastanga Yoga, and finally perform Bhakti Yoga while at the same time practicing Varnashram rules without desires. So, not for these people. But for those who cannot maintain their life without me, for my unalloyed devotees alone, Tesham Eva, since they are worthy objects of my mercy, Anukampartam, I, situated with attachment for those souls, Atma Bhavasta, like a bee in the lotus flower, revel in their Atmas, my dazzling, reveal in their Atmas, my dazzling form and qualities. Like a bee in the lotus flower, I reveal in their Atmas my dazzling form and qualities. So Baladeva Vidyabhusan is describing to us who is going to get this lamp of knowledge. He said, not those people who just follow the path of Nishkam Karma Yoga, and then Jnana Yoga and Astanga Yoga, and finally come to Bhakti Yoga. At the same time they're doing Varnashram, even though they have no desire, no material desire, not for those. But for, who is he for? Only for those who cannot maintain their lives without me, for my unalloyed devotees alone. they are worthy objects of Krishna's mercy. So, very rare. You can understand. Right?
Maharaj, can I ask?
Yes, you can ask.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, it is written, like a bee in the lotus flower reveals in their atmas. Why there, Maharaj? Because as I know that I am not soul, I am it's not my soul, I am soul. My soul is nothing, I am soul. Like this. So their atmas, why their atmas? There.
Well, Manaji, I think that's a translation point.
Okay.
You know, because Baladeva Bhusan, he wrote in Sanskrit.
Okay.
So if you can check you can check the original book, you know. You can't, you know, if you're going to look at something like that, you have to remember there are translation problems. And so the people who translate, sometimes they don't think in this way.
Thank you. Yes, Maharaj. Yes, sir.
Okay, going ahead, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, without the functioning of knowledge and other such elements, how can they attain you, and how can they even strive for that goal? Without the function of knowledge, because they're in the darkness of ignorance, right? They were in ajnana. So how can they strive for that goal? So all this is not at all necessary. Having the intention of giving them mercy by all means, even without them having to worry about attaining my mercy, since I myself make the endeavor to give them mercy, tesham evanukam partam, I, being situated within the functioning of their intellects, atmavavista, by the lamp of knowledge, knowledge arising from bhakti, which is beyond the gunas, not sattvic knowledge, since bhakti alone can reveal me, destroy the darkness born of ignorance in them alone, and not in other persons such as the yogis. I alone, aham eva, do this all on my own. Why should they strive for this purpose? I have already said that I carry the responsibility of their spiritual and material welfare. Yoga Shema Vahamyaham. I accept responsibility to supply all their material and spiritual requirements. So we are encouraged to fully surrender, to dedicate ourselves completely to the Lord. And the Lord dedicates everything to that devotee. Of course, we don't just want to get service from Krishna, but we have to have the desire to want to give service to Krishna. It's giving Krishna is what pleases the devotee. It's not getting from Krishna. We're already getting so much from Krishna, but we want to give everything, give more and more. Whatever we have is all Krishna's. It's not mine. It's Krishna's. We have to be convinced of that. So bhakti alone can reveal Krishna. It can destroy the darkness of ignorance. No other process, no other yogas. And Krishna does all this just simply by himself. Atma bhavasto, only by devotional service is the supreme truth, Krishna, pleased, and by his inconceivable energy, he can reveal himself to the heart of the pure devotee. The pure devotee always has Krishna within his heart. And with the presence of Krishna, who is just like the sun, the darkness of ignorance is at once dissipated. This is a special mercy rendered to the pure devotee by Krishna. So we are always hearing Krishna is conquered by devotional service. So this verse is explaining more about the nature of that devotional service. How it has to really be pure. So the pure devotee has Krishna in his heart. And because Krishna is in his heart, the ignorance is removed. We could say, well, Krishna is in the heart of everyone, isn't he? So how do we respond to that? Yes, Krishna is in everyone's heart, but we're covering Krishna. We're not allowing Krishna, we're covering up Krishna. Krishna is in the heart. Actually, it's a super soul in the heart. And we're covering up the super soul. We're not allowing the light of Krishna to come and penetrate all the darkness in our heart. Just like the sun may be shining very brightly in the sky, but we stay in our room, we close the curtains, and we don't want to go in the sunlight. And so, the same way, the non-devotees, they keep their hearts covered. They don't want Krishna to enlighten them. From Prabhupada's purport of text 11, the pure devotee does not have to worry about the material necessities of life. Prabhu, note that. Yeah. Those of you who are thinking, I need a bigger house, a bigger car, the pure devotee does not have to worry about material necessities of life. He need not be anxious, because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, who is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. This is the essence of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. By studying Bhagavad Gita, one can become a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord and engage himself in pure devotional service. As the Lord takes charge, one becomes completely free from all kinds of materialistic endeavors. Do you have any problems with this? We may say, well, what if he doesn't provide for me? Right? I'm doing my devotional service, but he doesn't seem to be providing for me. You said he would provide everything for me.
Maharaj, you told the story of that Brahmana in last class who marked in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna may send someone, but he doesn't come himself.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anandacharya, Ananta Acharya.
Yes, Maharaj.
Arjunacharya, right? That Krishna personally comes to maintain the devotee. Everything is provided automatically when Krishna is pleased by the service of the devotee. The problem is, maybe Krishna is not pleased with our service. Maybe it's our problem, right? We haven't pleased Krishna enough. And of course, if in our heart we're maintaining these kind of desires, then that's not going to please Krishna. But rather, we shouldn't worry about the material necessities. At the same time, you don't want to be neglectful. We have to take care of our responsibilities. So Prabhupada says, simply by studying Bhagavad Gita, we can become a soul completely surrendered to Krishna and engage in pure devotional service. Okay. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, these famous 4 verses which have been narrated are the essence of all topics in the Gita, removing the misery and producing complete joy for the jivas. Did you experience that from the Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita? Did it remove the misery and produce joy? I would like to know from the Chaturshloki verses, the 4 verses here, in what particular way have you increased your understanding or appreciation of the process of devotional service? What kind of realizations have you had from this Chaturshloki, from this study of the 4 verses Chaturshloki? Can you just go into your groups? Go into a group of 3, right? 18 here, is it? Yeah, go in groups of 3 and just discuss. What particular benefit have you had from the Chaturshloki? Which particular ways do you feel you have gained something, you've learned something? What's your particular realization based on the Chaturshloki verses? Yes?
His guest Aradhya Gadadhar Prabhu, are you there? Hare Krishna.
Who?
Aradhya Gadadhar Prabhu.
Oh, is he in your group? Is he in your group, Mataji?
No, and actually he was doing this service, Maharaj. He was doing his seva to put us in a rooms.
Oh, really? He was the one to put us in groups, huh?
Yes, today he was doing the seva, Maharaj. I think...
He's disappeared, has he?
No, he's here only, Maharaj. He's here only. Prabhuji is here.
Okay.
He's recording that, but I don't know. Is there anyone else who can do this?
Yeah, I'm still.
Yes, he's here, Maharaj.
Anybody else in the group, Prabhu?
Krishna.
Okay, is everyone back? Yes? Maybe, is Parama Karuna there?
Yes, Maharaj, I'm here.
Okay, Prabhu, you can tell us something. What did you discuss?
Maharaj, we were discussing that in these four verses, just meditating that these four verses, the first two verses kind of share how devotee acts in his relationship to Krishna and how much committed a devotee is towards the relationship with Krishna. He's constantly serving with love, talking about him, committing his life and soul to him. And the last two verses kind of reflect Krishna's heart for the devotees, how much he cares for his devotees. And we were just feeling thankful that Krishna takes it upon himself to remove all the ignorance from the devotees' hearts. And it's a beautiful relationship where both Krishna and both and devotee, they are working so nicely together in a relationship of love. So it's a beautiful relationship being reflected in these four verses and gives a lot of assurance to a devotee. If he does his job of giving himself to Krishna, and Krishna is willing to take 10 steps extra to take care of his devotee.
Oh, very nice. Yes, thank you very much. That's very nice. I appreciate this. The first two verses are the devotees serving Krishna, and the last two verses are Krishna serving devotees. Very good. Thank you. Yes? Anybody else like to offer? What about Param Satyabhama? Priya Satyabhama?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, we jotted down only 4 points, 4 basic points, which we said in the first 10.8 that Krishna is saying that I am everything. I am the source of everything. In 10.9, Krishna says that with association of devotees, you get devotional service. In 10.10, Krishna says that you need a bona fide spiritual master, and eagerness is the qualification to serve. And in 10.11, he says that with my mercy, I'll give you knowledge, and you will, the darkness of ignorance will be destroyed. So these were the 4 little points that we jotted down in the discussion, basic points in Chatushloki.
Okay, thank you. Very, very
Hare
nice.
Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else like to add anything?
Maharaj, like Rukmini Sevi Hari Sevni Mataji and I were discussing that it is similar to Damodar Leela, where if we endeavor, Lord is telling that if you become devoted, then I will give you the understanding. So it's like the 2 finger shot which are there. That if we are endeavoring to use our intelligence and everything in Lord's service, then Lord will give us the understanding too, so that we can understand Him and go back to the spiritual world.
Okay. Compared to Damodar Leela, the 2 fingers too short, yeah? The 2 fingers too short. Those 2 fingers represented our own endeavor and also Krishna's mercy.
Yes.
So we have also that in Chatushloki, right? With the endeavor of the devotee and also dependence on Krishna's mercy. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. We have a couple of more questions here. I'd like you to have a look at them here and maybe see, let's see, how many groups have we got? We have 4 questions. Oh no, 3 questions. Okay. 3 questions. Each group, you can look at these questions and see if you can come up with some answers. And remember, how would you reply to people who are not necessarily impious? In other words, they could be quite pious people, but they just have wrong understandings. So we have to, don't be too heavy with them. So first one, I believe that by helping people in distress, one can always be in communion with God, for God always cares for those in need. Right? Question 1. That's question 1. Question 2. By studying and analyzing various literature, I am in constant communion with God. What is the necessity of service or devotion when he... And then some people say that God speaks to them directly, therefore they do not need any guru for guidance. Well, we did that one already. We did that, so we only have these 2 questions. There's just 2 questions here. So see what you can do with these 2 questions. Helping people in distress, God always cares for those in need. and studying and analyzing literature, I'm in constant communion with God. What's the need of service and devotion? All right?
Yeah, Shimara should make breakout rooms.
Yes.
Okay. Maharaj, should I close the breakout rooms?
Yes?
Okay, I'll do it. Okay, so the 60-second timer is started. Yeah, I guess Maharaj, everyone is here.
Okay. So, can we have some group respond to the first question?
Maharaj, yeah. Maharaj, actually, in regard to this first question regarding helping the people in distress, so there is one thing that I could remember in one of the lectures Prabhupada told. So here we are taking distress to be, because of the want of money or because of some problems in his life or whatever such cause maybe for this distress. And Prabhupada was saying, he was giving an analogy. He was saying, say someone is in jail and because of some misdoing, some wrongdoing that he has done, he has been put to jail. And say suppose you try to free him from the jail. So what would happen? You yourself will become liable to be punished because you yourself are, helping one prisoner to escape from the prison. So you yourself are liable to be punished. So Prabhupada was saying, in the same sense that, someone is suffering distress because of his past reaction and Krishna has given him distress. So if you try to help him in material ways, then in that way, in that manner, you yourself, become a culprit. But yeah, if you try to help in a, spiritual manner by trying to give him bhakti or something like that, then that's a different case. So I found that example very wonderful.
Very interesting. I never heard this before. Yeah. Interesting. Helping people to get out of jail who should be in jail. Thank you, Prabhu. Very interesting. Yes, anybody else like to answer this first question? We have some other versions? Harini, is it?
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, I also like what Prabhu says, and it's like similarly, I want to little bit add. Yes, Maharaj, people are actually, as we read in the earlier chapters, that four types of people come to Krishna, and one of them are distress. So people who are coming to Krishna in distress, and in the beginning, yes, in our group we were three, Tarun Prabhu, Jia Mataji and me. So we were also discussing, Tarun Prabhu was telling that in distress one can always win so if somebody in the beginning we can help for the material thing, but at last we know that how the actually he was saying that we are actually spiritual beings. So our actually distress can be gone can be gone by performing devotional service only. So like we can help the people.
Oh, the only cure.
And he was giving. Sorry, Maharaj. And he was giving two. The Prabhu and Mataji was giving two things that Prabhu was saying that ant to elephant. Everyone is feeding. Everyone is being feeded by Krishna only. And Prabhu was telling that the constitutional position. Our constitutional position is like he's giving the example of fish out of water. If you give anything to fish, if you take fish out of water and she will die because it's her constitution to be in water. And Jaya Mataji also was saying that if a child is crying, you give chocolate, burger, pizza, anything, he will be satisfied for some time. But when you help that child meet the Supreme Father, like his father and our Supreme, in the Tattva, the Supreme Father is Krishna. So if you help that, then only the soul will be out of distress and he can feel spiritual bliss.
Okay. You have to connect to Krishna to get free of distress. But, you know, people who are not devotees, you know, you talk about devotional service and connecting them to Krishna and so on, but they're not devotees. They don't have that feeling for God, you know, they don't have that. They think, you know, here I am, I'm in distress. God's not taking care of me.
Maharaj, care is like a thing that we also, when we started coming to ISKCON, that we also got so much care and love from devotees that we also got attached. In the beginning, we were also having the material problem. So we were also not devotees at that time. We are practicing now. So if I take my example, so when I came, if you give care to anybody, if you give care, if in the form of even prasadam, dadati pradhiginati, if you just, if you know, people really want to talk to somebody, if you don't share, if they feel like you are a person who will not tell to anybody what he is sharing with you, they get so much confidence in the beginning level also, as we start in the, you know, small groups like Bhakti Riksha and so there are so many girls, they connect like this. In the beginning, they start with their material problem, this and that, but gradually, they really become a very good bhaktas. So, and in non-devotee even can become a devotee just by starting with the care, doing, helping, listening, like this Maharaj.
Okay, so you feel Krishna consciousness helps people in all their distress. They come in distress and somehow they're able to, you know, even, you know, people maybe they come hungry or something, you know, and they're thinking, you know, my family, they're all starving, you know, I have to feed them, I have no money, you know.
Yes, yes, Maharaj. Today only, yes, I was hearing this Sarbhum Prabhuji's lecture. He was also saying that Prabhupada, he was telling in the lecture, it was on Balram Purnima, he was telling in the lecture, you just please prepare the nice prasadam, if possible, with ghee and with so much love and devotion. Prabhupada, at the time of Prabhupada, there was only one DT kitchen. He really wanted to, just by prasadam, more than 90% devotees he has made. He just used to chant Hare Krishna and give prasadam with love, and they will, and all become devotees. So this is needed. So
okay. We need some good prasadam cooks, right? Must be nice prasadam.
Anything, yes, Maharaj.
So helping people in distress, one can always be in communion with God. You say, I feel, well, if God takes care of those in need, then they don't need me to help them, right? Because God, if they're in need, they're in distress, God is taking care of them. Why, you don't need me to help. What am I supposed to do?
Maharaj, one who is very dear to Krishna, if one really wants to become very dear to Krishna, that person will do what Krishna pleases the most. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who preaches about this knowledge, gives this knowledge to others. So that is the best thing. And we also read in NOD that that's why we trying to be Ghoshnanandi, not Bhajananandi. Bhajananandi is also very dear to Krishna, but one who is a Ghoshnanandi, who tries to, this is the best way. Krishna, if Prabhupada also said, his divine is Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj also said that if I make a one pure devotee, and that devotee is I'm like So that is a big thing which pleases Krishna most. If we take one soul to Krishna back.
No, you're not very ambitious. You're happy just one soul, huh?
No, Maharaj, I'm just giving an example. Please bless me that I may be able to serve very nicely.
Okay. What about the second question? Studying, analyzing various literatures. I'm in constant communion with God. What's the necessity of service or devotion? Is beyond the senses. How do you respond to this fellow? Nonsense person. Yeah?
Maharaj, Krishna is not Gyan Grahi Janardana, he is Bhav Grahi Janardana. And our intention can only be known through services. If I am just, just studying about Krishna and not doing anything practical for him, how will he know that what is the mood that I have for him and how much love I have for him? Another thing regarding being the senses, of course, he is beyond material senses. But like we hear that Krishna has readily accepted to take the form of the deity so that we can serve him with our these present senses also. And also third thing that we hear is that Prabhupada gives the example of iron rod. When it is put into fire, it becomes fire. Its properties are the same of the fire. It is not different from fire. So when we engage our senses in service of Krishna, they become purified, and Krishna does accept our service. And in fact, Maharaj, that conversation between Shukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj in 10th canto, I guess 87 or 86 chapter, it's all regarding this thing only, when Parikshit Maharaj asked that Krishna is all transcendental, we are all material, and through our material senses we cannot approach Krishna. So how can these material senses be in line to serve something which is beyond this material senses? So whole, I guess, this 87th or 88th chapter is regard to this thing only, the 10th canto.
Okay.
So main thing is we need to do something practical, because devotion means devotional service, like Prabhupada used to say. Devotion means devotional service.
But he claims anyway, he's studying and analyzing literature, he's in constant communion with God. So is it actually possible? Someone, if he's studying Srimad Bhagavatam, there's no difference, right? That's what you're saying. Srimad Bhagavatam, study Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada said, read Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna will appear on the pages of the Bhagavatam.
Maharaj, if one is reading scripture, then like Prabhupada, there was one devotee whom Prabhupada asked, are you reading my books daily? Are you studying my books daily? He said, yes, Prabhupada, I am reading your books daily. When he said the word read, not study, Prabhupada, once this fist very tightly on the table, and he said, I am not asking whether you are reading. I am asking whether you are studying. The main difference between reading and studying is, reading is just only reading the scriptures, or maybe you're getting some information. But in terms of knowledge part, there should be wisdom. There should be practical application of what all you're learning from the literatures that one is reading.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Prabhupada wrote one letter. I was in the temple, and the temple president got a letter from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wrote about, he said, we have to cram his books. We have to cram, just like before an examination, we would cram. It means you do a lot of studying in a short time. You try to cram, study everything, memorize it all. So Prabhupada used that term. He said, we have to cram his books. He wanted us to study so intensely. It was very interesting. Prabhupada used that term.
Also, Maharaj, there is one thing like, Hamsadutta Maharaj, once he was staying in Prabhupada's room, and Hamsadutta Maharaj was not able to sleep because, he was a bit anxiety that I am in the same room where Prabhupada is. So Prabhupada one night saw that he is awake, and he asked him that, why are you awake? He said, Prabhupada, since last 3 days, because I am sleeping in your room, I am not able to sleep. Prabhupada said, yes, this is the main aim of, all our activities. We have to make eating zero, sleeping zero, defending zero, mating zero. And I guess similarly, there was a conversation where Prabhupada was asking that, do you know why I wrote all these books? The devotee asked, yes, why Prabhupada? Prabhupada said so that you can chant attentively.
Oh. Okay. So, we want to chant. Okay, but here in this particular question here, constant communion with God. What is the necessity of service and devotion when he is beyond the senses?
Maharaj, Rupa Goswami also says that Rishikena Rishikeshan Sevanam Bhakti Ruchate, that topmost devotion is when we engage our senses in the service of the master of senses. So even scriptures also tell that not just it's important that we read the scriptures, but the goal of scriptures is to engage in the devotional service of Lord and not just speculation, because we cannot understand Lord by the inductive process that we are reading scriptures and trying to understand about Lord. We should engage our senses in the service of Lord so that they become purified.
But he's arguing there's no necessity of service or devotion. It's beyond the senses. Is God beyond the senses?
Yes, Maharaj.
Certainly God is beyond the senses, right?
Yes, Maharaj.
So, why is he studying books? Isn't studying books also using the senses?
Yes.
Yes, Maharaj.
He's saying he's studying books. That's using the senses. You have to use your senses to study books. But we have to depend on mercy. You want to have communion with God, we have to, as we said, you have to please Him. And how do you please Him? By service. By service, then the Lord can reveal Himself to us. Although He is beyond the senses, He can reveal Himself to us. He can give His mercy to the devotees. And He can reveal Himself. We have to qualify ourselves for the mercy to be able to perceive God, to have communion with God. It's not just by studying and analyzing. That speculation, definitely, that's an inductive process. It's very laborious, very troublesome. Just like the Jnana Yogis, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Klesho dikātarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam. Right? He said, oh, just trouble. They make advancement with great difficulty and very slowly. Because we have no experience of what is beyond the senses. So if the Lord He is beyond the senses, but He can reveal Himself to us if He wants. And we have to please Him. We have to know how to please Him. And that is the purpose of service and devotion. All right, any other points? Yes, Manaji, go ahead.
Maharaj, I was thinking that it is written in the question that by studying and analyzing various literatures, I am constant companion with God. So, Maharaj, by studying and analyzing, we will come to know that we have to love Krishna. Love means to serve and serve means to please. When we are reading, it means that, if I'm just reading, I'm not practically applying, then it's not, Krishna will not reveal me. Like it becomes easy when we are reading what we are reading and we applying. And by applying, as you said, that Krishna will, if he be very merciful, He will reveal to us. He will reveal to us.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We need Krishna's mercy. We need to study Prabhupada's books. Prabhu was saying reading is not enough. He said we have to study. And I said, Prabhupada said we have to cram. Not just study, you have to cram. Intense study. Okay, we'll stop here tonight. Let's end it here. And we'll be back tomorrow night.
Maharaj, just want to ask you one question.
Yes.
These assignments we have, question number 1 and question number 3, I am a bit confused about the scope of these two assignments. Is it possible for you to just explain your own words as to what we should cover in these two questions? They seem to be very broad-based.
Yeah, they are broad-based. I thought that was nice. It leaves it open for you yourself to, as you like to tackle the subject, you're free to choose, One is about the process of demigod worship. So, you can explain, we covered that, we explained that demigod worship it's Vedic, part of the Vedas, it's there, authorized in the Vedic literature, and people worship the demigods. But generally, the mass of people are not properly informed about how to worship the demigods, and they worship the demigods thinking the demigods to be supreme and independent. So the proper process of worshipping the demigods is to recognize that the demigods are under the control of the Supreme Lord. And you can quote the relevant verse in Bhagavad Gita, which says that Krishna fulfills the desires. Whatever the demigods give, they have to have it sanctioned by Lord Krishna. And the process of demigod worship is all right so long as we know that the demigods are limbs of the Supreme Lord. And by worshipping the demigods, they're just part of the limbs of the Lord. And generally people worship demigods to get material results, which are limited and temporary, for material blessings. But we can also worship the demigods, knowing them to be part of the Supreme Lord, and we can aspire to get devotion for that Supreme Lord, to develop our devotion for the Supreme Lord through the worship of the demigods. So like that, you can explain these kind of things. The section of, the verses are mentioned, which section of verses of the demigod worship is mentioned in chapter 7 and 8, 9. So pick out the relevant verses. It's quite not a very challenging topic there. Demigod worship is very general. It's something people in India need to know. It's very important for the Hindu society to be educated about actually the position of the demigods and also the worship of the demigods. And what are the problems and what are the benefits and how to get the greatest benefit from worship of the demigods. The people may worship demigods and they're worshipping to get material benefit. Then they should start to inquire that I'm only getting things which are material and temporary. Is there not some God I can worship? I can get eternal benefit. Now a thoughtful person will think like that. Why should I get something which is material and temporary? Can I not get some eternal benefit from someone? And then we can introduce the concept of worshipping the Supreme Lord. So the demigod worship helps in that way that it can bring people to worship the Supreme Lord when they're awakened, when they're properly guided. In the beginning, they're worshipping demigods to get material results, but gradually they understand that I'm only getting material benefits. It's also temporary. I want to get eternal benefit. Oh, then you have to worship the Supreme Lord. So we can explain like that. It's one part of the process of demigod worship, that it brings us to worship the Supreme Lord by coming through the Vedic culture.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, so thank you so much for this one. Can you also please comment on the first question? That is actually more broader than this one. This one was still manageable, but the first one, I just want to understand a little more scope of work from your side.
Well, the first one, it was the connection between chapter 6 and 7 and the first verse and the third verse, right? Is it the third verse or which verse?
Yes, Maharaj, first and third verse.
The third verse, what is the third verse again? Manushyanam Sahasresu. Yeah. So
Maharaj, but specifically in the third verse, the second part is being referred here. The Tamapi Siddhanam Pashinamiti.
Of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth.
Yes, Maharaj.
Huh?
Yes, Maharaj.
So chapter 6, anyway, you know chapter 6 was describing the yoga ladder, and the culmination of the yoga ladder was that Krishna's at the top of the yoga ladder, and we have the topmost yogi is the one who's thinking of Krishna within his mind and rendering service to him. And so chapter 7, after concluding chapter 6, Krishna is saying Bhakti Yoga is the top. So chapter 7 begins to talk about Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga begins with hearing about Krishna. So here, that was mentioned, you know, Krishna said, now hear from me. So that's the beginning of Bhakti Yoga, hearing. And Krishna also begins the verse, Maya Sakta Manaparta, with your mind attached to me. So again, the mind has to be there, the mind has to be focused on Krishna. It's not just only, you know, hear about Krishna, but constant, you have to hear, focus, you have to focus the mind on hearing about Krishna. And so devotional service is using the body, mind and words in the service of Krishna. So the mind is actually the first thing. We know Maharaj Ambarish, very first thing was engage the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. So we have to fix our mind in hearing about Krishna. And then of those who've achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Well, that's going into the subject matter that most people are simply attracted to the Brahman. Of those who go to the spiritual path, there's only a few who go on to understand about Krishna and to understand the full nature of the absolute truth. That most people, of course, the majority of people are just karmis, just mudhas, just into sense gratification. But of one man among thousands, they try to understand Krishna, but they get just simply attached to the Brahman. And they don't actually go on to understand the full nature of the Supreme Lord. So that's important, that of those who are hardly one knows me in truth. That those people who are actually understanding the absolute truth are very rare. Devotional service is very rare. You know, you could quote Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj said to his father, because Prahlad's father was asking him where he got devotion from. And Prahlad began by saying, you know, it's not very easy to get devotion. He said, Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova Bibopi Pajeta Greha Vratanam. He says, you know, people who are attached to sense gratification, who made their vow to stay in the material world, then they'll never understand Krishna consciousness. So like that, people have to focus the mind, first of all. Hear about Krishna. You hear about Krishna, you purify the mind. And with the mind, when the mind is purified, then you can focus more on devotional service, on actually thinking how to please Krishna, how to serve Krishna. Okay, so those are some things to think about.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll stop here then. Hare Krishna, see you tomorrow night. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.